everyone. All right, we're gonna get started with understanding annotations, how to annotate, but also why to annotate. So this presentation, it's not going to take very long, but it's really my attempt to persuade you to annotate. It's typically not a habit that students have. Students who even if they do know what annotations mean, they may have practiced it before because it's required in class, but it's not a habit that they've developed. And this is my attempt to persuade you to please develop it into a habit. Annotations are going to be so helpful for you. And this is just how I'm going to persuade you. So let's get into that. What is the point? Why even annotate, mark up the page? Like, why? And I propose that it's really for having a conversation with someone. And for the most part, it's going to be with one or two people, if not both. It's either going to be to your future self, you're writing notes that your future self is going to appreciate when it comes time to writing the paper, or it's going to be to the author. Sometimes the notes are reactions or responses to the text, and it's almost like you're having a conversation there with the author, even though the author is not present. But it's usually one of these two reasons. Those are the majority of um, circumstances. Now, when you annotate, you want to note your thoughts. That is going to be superior to any highlighting or underlining you can do. You want to note your thoughts. That is the important stuff. It's not the words on the page that are like, oh my goodness, great sentence. It's not going to be that because those sentences will always be there. If you reread the entire thing, you can find it, but you're not always going to remember your thoughts, how you react to things, what you think about, what you question, what you consider as you're reading the text. Your reactions, your responses in your mind, those are the things that you want to know on the page. So benefits. What are the benefits to annotating? Quotes are going to be easier to find when you're writing the analysis. Your thoughts and reactions are noted. Any questions or confusions that you have, they can be revisited. Because you're marking it up, you're pointing these things out to you, to your classmates when you bring up into discussions, and that is usually the function of annotations. Text that are pages apart can also be connected together. This is particularly important if you're writing a essay on a book, anything that has multiple chapters, right? If you find something on, say, page, I don't know, like 73, you can, you might think, oh, didn't I read about this earlier in this story or in this book? You can flip back, look at your annotation, see what pops out, and then it'll be easier for you to find it back in like page 18 or page 31, right? And so when you have multiple pages of text, it's usually same author, and so they're writing in the same stream of thought, and so those can be easily connected together and pieced together, and so annotations can be helpful that way. But pretty much in short, you pretty much cut down the number of times you need to reread the entire text in depth. If you're annotating, if you're noting things that stand out to you, writing down why, making notes of what is important and why it's important in that moment, that is going to cut down the number of times you're going to have to reread the whole thing especially when it comes to writing the paper. So what are some methods? I'll go through these pretty quick because you can also Google this stuff. You can look into what other people do. And I'm pretty sure you have also practiced annotating, but we want to think about what might work for us and to practice, use a mix of methods. That's going to be the most helpful. Post-its are great, right? Because it's a huge, well, not huge, but it's quite big, right? And you can write full sentences on the post-it, slap it on the page. If you don't want to actually mark on the book, this is great because you just rip it off. The page does not get written on, it does not get damaged in any way. The issue, though, is that it's difficult to actually pinpoint the post-it to the specific part of text on the page. And it covers a whole bunch of text when you paste it on. And if you ever need to actually see the text, you got to rip it off. The moment you rip it off, personal experience, it's not going to be sticky, as sticky moving forward. And so the rate of which you will likely lose the post-it just increases. The more you have to peel it off, stick it back on, peel it off, stick it back on. I actually had a student, I think one semester, 2 semesters ago, where um, she would write on post-its and she'd stick it in a notebook so that it wouldn't actually cover the book. And she found it was helpful instead of writing directly into the notebook because then all of the thoughts are like little speech bubbles, but they're like post-its, and then she can just like put it anywhere on the page and like visually it helps her with the brainstorming process and noting everything. And so that's one way to do it. I mean, I have never tried that way, but it worked really well for her. But yeah, post-its are an option. Highlighting, underlining, this is great because you can get super specific in the text. You can do sentences, lines, phrases, words. You can even color code if that's your thing, and like have multiple colors and pens and highlighters and all of that stuff. The issue, though, here is that if you do not record your own thoughts, it's going to be really easy to forget why you highlighted that. Um, yeah, so something to consider. I highly recommend highlighting or underlining. I do not recommend that to be the sole way that you annotate. You must write your thoughts. That is going to be the most important thing. So please consider writing in the margins because you can have detailed notes and thoughts to return to come essay writing time. Oftentimes, students get stuck on what to write, what quotes to pull. If you make these notes, it's going to jumpstart your brainstorming process. You can get to, get the ball rolling that much quicker because you already have thoughts to get started with, and you can just work from there as opposed to trying to figure it all out by revisiting the text, rereading the thing again. It might also be helpful for you to see your past self when you go back and reread months or years later, especially if you're taking an intro course, a GU course, even outside of this English class. You're likely going to have other reading classes, and it's not uncommon for multiple professors to assign the same readings throughout the years. Um, I know I've had to read The Great Gatsby 3 times with 3 different teachers, The Scarlet Letter 2 times with 2 different teachers. Um, and that's just in English alone. That's not including all of the texts that are interdisciplinary, right? Like Karl Marx, The Communist Manifesto, you'll likely read it in a sociology class. You'll likely read it in a history class. You'll also likely read it in an econ class. And so you'll also get texts that are interdisciplinary, and it's going to end up coming up time and time again. And so it's just going to help you cut down the amount of times you actually need to read for those classes. If you annotate, it helps you remember, helps you take notes on the main points and all of that. Now, the issue with writing in the margins is that it can get messy. Practice does make perfect. It is also a skill where, well, it's not a skill, but I highly recommend you develop the skill of like pretty much not writing full sentences in the margins. If you can cut down your 15, 16 word sentence of what your thought is into a key phrase, 2 or 3 words that help get the message across to you, that is going to be much more helpful because because you're likely not going to have a lot of space. And so cutting it down to just those few words, um, key ideas, key phrases. That's going to save you space, save you time. It's going to be easier to read. So I recommend that. Now you can also bracket general lines or paragraphs. You can dog ear pages if you feel comfortable folding them. Some people find it like disgusting or gross. I love dog earing pages. I sometimes will fold pages completely in half just so that I can find it easily. For me, books, they get the most love when you actually use them and wear them down. I am not afraid of like cracking the spine, like, bending, seeing all of the bends along the spine and like it being used and not being able to fold back properly, perfectly flat, all that stuff. You can also circle or box words or lines. You can write bullet points at the beginning or the end of a chapter where there's more space. And so usually when a chapter ends, let me see here, if I can just show you an example. So usually when a chapter ends, you'll notice that there's space left over because it stops at the top half of the page. And so you have the bottom half here, for example, right? It usually looks something like this, where you have, oh, sorry, it's like, I don't know if you can see it. But you have like all of this space that is that's just empty because the chapter is done. And so I actually use that space to like bullet point, okay, here are the key things that happen. If it's a novel, I'll be like, oh yeah, this is where the character gets a new job. This is when they are now here and then they're preparing for this, or someone buys a dog, whatever it might be. And so that also helps me figure it out, and helps me find information easier. If it's a nonfiction text, same thing. I know, okay, well, main ideas in this chapter were this, this, and this, and it's just like quick little bullet points. So that is something that I have found to be very helpful for full-length books. Yes, but the best practice is to use a pro-size mix. Sorry, I'm just gonna move myself again. The best practice is to use a pro-size mix of methods at once. Whatever works best for you, I highly recommend that you try something, see if it works or not. If not, try something else. But you want to find a way to help yourself be more efficient in the reading process. Reading and writing, those two things are the most time-consuming thing, right? When you read, you have to read the whole thing. When you write, you're writing the whole document. They're both very time-consuming endeavors, and they're both very individual endeavors. It's very rare that you write as a group or that you read together as a group, right? It's no group work. It's all individual work, that takes a lot of focus and a lot of time. So if you're able to find ways to be efficient with reading, with writing, with specifically what's tailored to you, it's going to help you so much in the long run. You can cut down the amount of time you need to study, the amount of time you need to prep, the amount of time you need to reread. It's just helpful all around. So that is my attempt to persuade you. Now, moving forward, is it actually necessary for this class? I would say yes. You do need to know how to annotate to perform well in this class, but it is possible for you to pass, okay? I just think you're going to be putting yourself at a disadvantage. This is likely not the only reading class you're going to have in college. If you take a history class, you're going to need to read. A philosophy class, you're going to need to read. Any world history, any history class in general, anthropology, music theory, music history, psychology, sociology, anything in the humanities, any gender study, right? Ethnic studies, you're going to be reading. You're going to be reading a lot. And so it's up to you, I suppose, how much time you want to spend reading, rereading, because usually those classes all have essays as well. Okay, so that is my advice to you. I would hope that you would reconsider and see what works best. And if you have any questions, of course, you can email me. We can set up a time to meet, or if it's something that can be answered over email, then you can go ahead and just ask it there.